And we have a returning guest here on Fire Breathing Rob. And if you are watching this, we thank you for watching. And also, please like and subscribe to our YouTube podcast. If you're listening to us on another platform, thanks so much. But we are really trying to focus on YouTube right now and really building on that. So please like and subscribe to this channel. We greatly appreciate this. And as I said, we do have that returning guest coming back on, Kathleen Dameron. She's coming live, rather, from Paris, France. It's around almost 10:30 her time. And we're lucky to have her at such a late night in Paris, France. So Kathleen, first of all, thanks so much for coming back on the program. Greatly appreciate your time tonight.
Well, I am delighted to come back. Last time you had me so comfortable talking to you that I kind of like bared my heart and shared how dramatic it was for me when I was a child and when I was young around racism and the racial violence in the United States, and sort of like admitting publicly to a couple hundred people I left the United States because it was too uncomfortable and too racist. And I felt so vulnerable afterwards. So you did a good job of making me feel comfortable enough to say things I felt less comfortable about. And at the same time, when you leave a country that you were born in and then you were raised in and you've never lived everywhere else and it's the only language you speak, I know that people could feel that racism for Black people is serious stuff. I mean, it impacts us and how comfortable, how at ease, and how safe we feel.
I agree with you, and thanks again for that. And I appreciate you saying that about the program and appreciate you coming back on. So let's kick this around. So I know you wanted to talk a little bit more about your story because we did do a lot of talking, but we know there's so much more to unwind about your journey anyway into Paris. So with that said, Kathleen, can you speak about when you got to Paris, how did it feel? You were a stranger in a totally different country with totally different customs than you're used to in America. So how was that? How did you adapt to all these different customs?
Well, I'll tell you two stories. I'm going to start with answering the first part of your question, which is I got to Paris and I had never lived abroad. So I'm like taking in the city. Paris is so different than anything in the Midwest, and it's a beautiful city. It's just gorgeous. And so I'm looking at the architecture, and I was lucky that I had my advisor's wife, and that's a story I'll tell you, who had arranged for friends of hers to welcome me, to accept me. And so I'm looking at French people and I'm being groomed, and sometimes I'm being told that this is how you do things. And I remember the biggest thing was about time. Because in the United States, we have this real big thing around colored people's time and white people's time. And, you know, and Black people get a lot of flack about not being serious, not being responsible because, you know, they 15 minutes late or 50 minutes flexible time. And there I was in Paris, and the French have flex time. You know, you get invited to dinner at 8 o'clock, and if you show up at 8:30, you're on time. It's okay. And so I just had this feeling of, instead of going from Black people time to white people time, I was in a country of white people and they all worked on Black people time. And you're like, you gotta go boom. It's not about color, it's about culture. And cultures can be different and okay. And I think the United States is making progress now about different cultures being okay. But when I was growing up, the tension with the races was that everything that was in our Black culture about how we do things was wrong, and tone it down and do this and do that and that. And they have this country in France of people who talk loud and who make lots of gestures, and they have flexible time, and they're white. So that was the biggest thing that struck me, surprised me, and in a sense, made me comfortable in Paris.
So let's keep going into this. Now, you did say your advisor, was it his wife or right?
Yeah. So I was in university, and you know, I told the story. I got to university when I was 16 years old, and I'm in California, and then my dreams start crashing because it's not a liberal, accepting place of Black people, and you still have Black while driving. And so I start talking to my advisor and his wife. And my advisor was a Frenchman, blonde, blue-eyed Frenchman, and his wife was blonde and blue-eyed, and she was really short. And so I'm talking to her about my disillusionment with the United States and with my desire when I hear, you know, the United States is the greatest country and it's the best place. And I'm saying, you know, I want to know. And she's French and she's Parisian, and she's letting me see that perhaps in France it's different. And of course, since World War I and World War II, all these Black artists and intellectuals who'd gone to France had always said it was such a relief to be in France. It was so, you could walk into any restaurant, you could walk into any hotel, you could walk down the street, not be scared of being beat up or shot by the police. So I'm talking to her, and she's seeing my dreams and feeling my disillusionment. And then she helps me. She writes her friends and her family in Paris and says, I'm sending you this 18-year-old, and she was very nice. She said, she's got a lot of energy and she's intelligent and she's disillusioned right now. Can you receive her? So I had the most extraordinary welcome into Paris because my advisor's wife has used her friends and her family. So I was welcomed. I was in a family, which is one of the reasons why I learned to speak French so fast, because we agreed everybody would speak French to me. And they taught me how to eat French food, and they taught me how to drink French wine. So I had enough wine to kind of cool me down and chill me out when I couldn't understand anything that was being said. And I was into the French culture, and they explained to me the difference between the West Indians and between the Africans. And, you know, coming from the United States, you've got this Blackness that is kind of like supposed to be the same thing everywhere. Whereas in France, you have different communities, the Caribbeans and the ones who come from Africa, and you have so many intellectuals and artists who were Black and who were recognized. They could go anywhere, in any restaurant, in any hotel, and there was this relaxedness of feeling safe, which doesn't mean France isn't racist. They are, and they were a lot less racist against me as an American. It was the first time in my life people said to me, "You're not Black, you're American." And I go, "What?" Because I have an American passport. I am an American. And in the States, being Black trumps everything else. Whereas in France, my nationality as American was that was a big part of my identity. So you can see I was welcomed, I was groomed, I was instructed. And I had never had that level of inclusion and effort to include me systematically. I mean, systematically in terms of the people that she sent me to, but also in terms of the school that I went to learn French. So that was different.
I do want to get to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. First, let's talk about Kamala Harris, first Indian American, first African American as a vice presidential candidate. She didn't last too long in the primary. I do believe she has some good policies. I am worried about some other things. What would Kamala Harris as a vice presidential candidate mean to the African American community? How do you feel about all this?
Okay, I'm going to take it in different steps.
Sure.
Number one, to have a brown woman, Black woman, who is on the ticket, who's going to be vice president, it's like, yay. In our community, it's like every Indian auntie and every Jamaican auntie is already getting her outfit together what she's going to wear to the inauguration, and they are praying to the ancestors to take care of her. Secondly, we are scared that some crazy person is going to harm her, kill her. And so all of the aunties are praying and for her to be safe. So the first part is just yay. Yay that America, in a point in time where we're so polarized between the right, white wing who doesn't think that non-white people deserve equality, justice, or dignity. And we've had so much agitation around Black lives that we've had this moment where, okay, we have moved towards Black Lives Matter, justice, dignity, equality, and that there are enough white people with brown people to say, this is the way we want our country to go. And that's fantastic. And then you can ask me about what are the particular specific policies, practices that Kamala Harris has had over time.
Right.
Well, if you're a progressive, she's not as progressive as you could want her to be.
With Kamala Harris, a lot of people are really upset. She had a lot of people that were in prison at the time, putting out the forest fires there. They were not getting paid. And that's, you know, a tough job. They were firemen. How come those guys were, when they were, you know, putting out those fires, when they were felons, when they got out of prison, they should have been able to join the fire department and had a job right out of that. They had that experience. A lot of people are also upset about Kamala Harris's, the way she handled the truancy as a district attorney in the in the state of California, but as in the city of San Francisco. And also she said she was for Medicare for all. She walked away from Medicare for all. So I would say, what would you say rather to those people that are progressives that do have those issues with her? And
I'm going to cut you off and say we might not talk about Joe Biden because we can deal with this with Kamala Harris in one fell swoop.
Okay.
If personally you would have preferred Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren and you get Biden and Kamala Harris, you've lost a lot. It's a fact. Okay?
Yeah.
The opening to having a true social net in the United States is more with Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. However, and I don't want to be insulting to anybody, if you can look at the current occupant of the White House and Mitch McConnell, if you can look at what this current Senate is willing to accept in terms of abandoning veterans, abandoning poor people, shutting down the government and not paying federal workers and paying themselves, because you know they did that several times. They shut down the government, they didn't pay federal workers, they didn't pay the US Coast Guard, but they paid themselves. This group of people compared to Kamala and Biden, no contest.
No, I agree with you, but I'm talking about if you look at the exit polls, if you look at people that voted for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren compared to, or even specifically just Bernie Sanders, people that were African American that voted for Bernie Sanders was that under 40 group. How is Kamala Harris and Joe Biden going to get these young African Americans, young white men and women, young Asians, young Hispanics to go out and vote for them when a lot of these people, and I'm in that age group too, a lot of these people have been getting screwed their whole lives. They can't find a job now. There's high unemployment right now. They look at Joe Biden, they see the crime bill where he put a lot of African Americans in jail. They see that he voted for NAFTA. He wanted to push the TPP through if Hillary Clinton got elected. So we see, and he's against Medicare for all. So we do see those issues. I do agree with you as far as Joe Biden is a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump. That's, you know, that's not even a contest. But I'm talking about a lot of these people don't agree with us. They don't see it the way we're seeing it.
And what I can say is I remember when people were saying, Hillary, Trump. Well, now that you have had 3 years of Trump, would your life have been better if it had been Hillary? Would Hillary have managed to provide COVID-19 better? I mean, I think the answer is clearly yes. Hillary would have listened to the specialist. She would have listened to the doctors. She would not have dismantled the Center for Disease Control. She would not have dismantled the programs that had worked when we had other pandemic possibilities coming to the US. And so my argument with young people or older people is, if you think that you can elect a government and go home for 4 years, that is not democracy. Democracy is, we have a contract. I ask you to do A, B, and C, and I'm gonna look at the news, I'm gonna write, I'm gonna call, I'm gonna put pressure on you to do what we, the people who elected you, want you to do. And so if we believe in Medicare for all, and enough of us put pressure on Biden and Harris, and if we've got enough people like AOC and the squad, we have a much higher probability of it happening. If we look at just having unemployment insurance when you have a pandemic that's killed 170,000 people, the current Mitch McConnell and Trump will not even give you the unemployment insurance in the midst of a pandemic. You have got as much probability as an ice cube in hell of getting any kind of basic human services for poor people. And poor people, for them, is people who don't have $1 million in the bank.
I agree with you 100%. And FYI, the viewers know this. I did vote for Hillary, even though I couldn't stand her. I actually think she's way more progressive than Joe Biden is. It's not even a contest. Even if you look at the Medicare thing, Hillary Clinton wanted to put it down to 50 years old, and obviously she wasn't for Medicare for all, but at least she wanted to do that. Joe Biden wants to put it at 60. That's not really a big difference, but so with that, Hillary's way more progressive. My thing to you, and last question is, Kathleen, I think what a lot of people my age, and it doesn't matter what race or religion they are, I think the people that support Senator Sanders and Senator Warren are upset that, you know, they got screwed in 2016 with Bernie Sanders. There was so much crap that.
And they got screwed in 2020.
And they got screwed in 2020. Yeah. So the thing is I agree with you 100%, and I can't stand Joe Biden and the Democratic establishment. I think they've been screwing progressive left and right for 30 some odd years, maybe even more than that. So this is what the problem is, and I agree. People need to put their pressure on. If Biden gets in day one, you have to hit them hard. I don't give a damn what it's about. You got to go after them. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican. If we want Medicare for all, if we want to make sure there's a Green New Deal, we need to put pressure on these politicians to get things done. And they think once they get in there, they can just do whatever the hell they want. You have to stand up and say no.
You have to stand up and say no, as you're saying, and you have to say it year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. You have to say it all the time. In other words, you got to be engaged as a citizen.
Yeah. And I think that was the problem. Sorry, Kathleen, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think that was what happened in the Obama years at times. There was a lot of racism against President Obama. There's no doubt about that. You look at what Trump did with the birth of lies, but you look at guys like Glenn Beck and all the crap that they spewed about President Obama's religion. Is he a Muslim? Is he the Antichrist? Is he this and that? That was all race bait and bullshit. But you know what? The thing is that a lot of Democrats fell asleep, didn't fight for when they passed Obamacare, they didn't fight for the public option. They didn't fight for Medicare for all against President Obama. You can love President Obama. You can like him as a person, but they're in there to serve you, not the corporations. You have to hit them hard. I'm sorry.
And when Obama was first elected, they had a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate.
That's right.
And they did not push through in those first 2 years a plan with the public option. And for some reason, they decided, you could say it's naivete, I have other words for it, that if they gave up the public option, that the Republicans would come over to their side and that everything would be in total agreement. They were so wrong. We gave up. They gave up for us. They gave up in our name the public option without a fight in the hopes that everything would be okay with the Republicans. And that now we have to insist, all of us, that a safety net. Canada and Western Europe have a safety net. They have a healthcare system. They don't have a for-profit healthcare, I was going to say rude words, establishment. And that is what Americans have a right to. We always hear, how are we going to pay for it? When they want to send a fighter jet, they don't say how we're going to pay for it. So our priority is health, education, taking care of older people. Guess what? When you have education, when you have safety, it's good for the economy. Can we stand up and say, I take Biden, I take Kamala, you are closer to what I aspire to than the other option, and we're going to keep talking, and I'm going to keep pressure that you go towards what I want. That's the only way to make it work.
Well, we'll end with this and with the last word, Kathleen, and it's always a pleasure. But the last word I'm going to say to you is, like you said, as you know, if they want to fight a jet, if they want to give $5 trillion like they gave in the pandemic to all these big businesses, they never ask who's going to pay for it. They never ask who's going to pay for it when they give themselves pay raises. So, and that's just some small stuff. There's tons of other stuff we could talk about of stuff that they do for their donors, the tax cuts. They never ask how they're going to pay for the tax cuts. So it's a total joke. But when it's for middle class working people that need Medicare for all, that need a Green New Deal so we can survive on this planet, and make sure, and you know what, it's actually of environmental racism, because we put the Black and brown communities in these places where there are all these trucking facilities, where there are these meat packing plants, where all the toxic fumes go into these people's houses, and when they go outside and they have to breathe it, and that's why these communities have a lot of people with asthma and a lot of people that die of all these diseases, and you don't see it in other communities. So it's a total joke. It's really sad, and people need to wake up in this country really fast, because, you know, the country's really getting away from us right now. And if Trump ever wins again, it's going to be extremely bad. It's going to be way worse than a Biden Harris. At least Biden Harris, you can go and fight. Trump, he doesn't give a damn. And if you give him 4 more years, he's really going to put this place to shame.
Yeah. And it's really bad, Trump, for Americans.
Yeah.
Trump has been catastrophic for the world, not just Americans, for the world. His closest friends are the dictators.
Yeah.
The Western Europeans have given up on someone who betrays them. The Kurds, he betrayed them. Why would anyone want to have the United States as an ally when they don't show up? They let you go. They betray you. They spy on their friends. So beyond what people can say how it's going in the United States, we've come to a point in the world where this presidency had a very detrimental effect on world politics and on world environment.
I agree, Kathleen. Kathleen Dameron, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate your time
Thank
as
you.
always.